Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first CORS micro event in 2024. Today, we are delighted to have two distinguished speakers with us. The first speaker is Professor Golam Kabir from University of Regina from Canada, and the second speaker is Sushil Kumar Sharma from Sustaineco, India. The topic is energy management. So without further delay, I would give the floor to our first speaker, Dr. Golam Kabir.
Okay.
Dr. Kabir, you have 45 minutes for presentation, and then there are 15 minutes for question and answers.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, now it is full screen.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. Awasthi, for the introduction and for giving me the opportunity to present this research. So I'm Dr. Golam Kabir. I'm currently the program chair and associate professor in industrial system engineering at the University of Regina. And before moving to Regina, I was in University of Windsor for 1.5 years, and before there, I was in Waterloo. I did my postdoc in Waterloo and UBC. So it's been I visited multiple universities, so finally settled down in Saskatchewan. Okay, so just to have some brief idea that my bachelor and master's in industrial engineering, but my PhD is from UBC at mainly on the civil engineering. So that is why I applied the tools and technique of the industrial engineering, some portion and also in the civil engineering. So that is why my current research interests are sustainable resilient infrastructure, then circular economy and net zero strategies, life cycle analysis, and the decision analysis under risk and uncertainty, data-driven decision making, and also the supply chain management. So that's why my presentation of today is not completely optimization or that portion, but there is also some of the element of the infrastructure point of view. So we can start the presentation. So this will be the brief outlines. I will briefly discuss background and the motivation. So I will spend a little bit more time about why it can be an interesting field to work for the research point of view. And then the objective of the research, and briefly the literature review, methodology, and resultant discussion. And then finally, we will discuss that how we can develop CCU, a supply chain in risk management framework. And finally, I will conclude my presentation and with some future research direction. So let's start the main portion. So if we think about the background and the motivation of the studies, so in that case, majority of us we know that the Paris Agreement that was signed during 2015, and to protect our environment or our Earth from the climate change. And there are many key concept was taken, but one of the main idea was that to limit the global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius. And Canada also committed to reach the net zero by 2050. Okay. And to get that one, to get that net zero commitment, we are one of the way to go there is to do the switch into the full 100% renewable energy. But so we know that it will be very challenging, especially from the Canada point of view. Suppose we are in Saskatchewan where our temperature varies from in summer it goes plus 40, and whereas in winter it goes almost more than minus 40. So to go 100% renewable, like in solar, it will be really challenging from the uh, from Saskatchewan point of view, because in the winter that will be a big drop. That will be a big load for the solar, which cannot be made. And there can be some other renewable which can help to get that one. But overall, that will still challenging. And if you remember that whenever the Russia war with Ukraine started, in that case, Germany, which was already into the renewable energy, and then they have to temporarily reopen some of their recently decommissioned or often soon to be decommissioned coal power plant, which was decommissioned in 2022 and 2023. But due to the winter of that winter 2024, they have to temporarily reopen that one, okay, for to meet the energy in this case. So that was why in this case that is still we are in the energy transition phase, but it will take some time to go into that phase. And recently, at the end of the last year, another significant event happened that was in COP 2020, COP 28 that happened in Dubai. And in that case, that also make a significant achievement. And one of the main achievement that in that agreement, it was signaled that it is the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era, and or the transition away from the fossil fuel. Okay, and for that one, there are many key concept has been considered, and there's many key agreement has been signed. But one of the key agreement and one of the key interesting topic was that suddenly the more importance of the carbon capture and the storage, or the CCS, and that CCS has emerged and emerged a way to go for a net zero target, and some people it is also considered that it is one of the factors that that agreement has been signed, and that CCS is also included into the mitigation action and the implementation work program decision. Okay, so overall, suddenly CCS was as an mainly a concept for a long time, but suddenly after the COP 28, it becomes a little bit mainstream in many field on many area. Okay, so it has a potential to reduce the carbon dioxide emission and prevent the climate change. But again, there is some debate on the CCS that whether how much effective that one will be. And another thing that it considered that CCS is mainly the oil and gas industry. They focus more on the CCS, and they also consider maybe that is they're more interested into that one, so that they can continue some sort of their extraction process. But overall, I will not go into that debate that whether CCS will work or not. But as this is and consider one of the way to get the energy transition. So that's why now CCS is also considered an important topic from the federal point of view. Okay, okay, so now as it's become an important part, so I will briefly discuss about the CCS or the CCUS and some of the key terms that will be a little bit helpful at the later stage of the presentation. So the carbon sequestration, one of the key terms is the carbon sequestration, which is the process mainly of capturing and storing the atmospheric carbon dioxide. And the CCS, that is the carbon capture storage. And now another term is the carbon capture utilization and the storage. Now utilization is added, so which is the CCUS. So which normally represent various technologies that can repurpose carbon emitted into the industrial process and reintroduce into manufacturing or pumped into the underground formation for the safe storage. If you see in a diagram, so this is a brief outcome on the diagram of the CCUS. So you can so the first portion is the capture, the carbon capture, and that can be happen that whenever we have any industry or any place where the significant amount of carbon is emitted, like the power generation or the coal power plant, or the steel industries or the cement industries, which are the significant contributor of the carbon dioxide. So we can, and they can capture the carbon, and then they can process that one, and then that one they can use the transport, some sort of transport. It can be a pipeline, or it can be ship, it can be also a rail, and then they can transport that one, and then they can store that one into an underground or any well, and it can be also under the sea. And another portion is coming, that is the utilization, that instead of dumping all the carbon, so if we can utilize those things in some of the other area like the mineral or the biological or the chemical way, then that can be also another way to utilize. So overall, that will be the uh, in brief, that will be the CCUS process. So I will not go too much in technical details that how to capture the carbon and those things, and because there are some of the technologies available for that one, like the carbon dioxide electrolysis, carbon neutral field, carbon dioxide feedstock for chemical synthesis, enhanced oil, gas and recovery, plant-based carbon capture. So different types of some of the technologies now is available, and is still but the issue that all the technologies are still till now is in not in a global scale or the mass scale, is mainly on the experimental or the short scale. Okay. So how the pros and cons of the each of the technologies, unfortunately I'll not be able to discuss that one because that is not my field, but in my department there's a big group which normally focus on the process engineering, and one of their main research areas to that how to develop new type of solvent which can improve the efficiency of the capture carbon, and so that they can be carbon captured and they can be transported or the utilized. Okay. So, but the overall, the idea of the goal of this research, that how if we wants to make the CCS uh, as an effective way to reduce the carbon emission, then we have to think from how we can transfer all this carbon from the source to the storage. Okay? And that can think from an supply chain point of view. Okay, so now it is no longer, previously majority of the research was done from in the capture point of view, how efficiently we can capture, how we can process that one. Another one is another portion research was done from the storage point of view, that what will be the process of the storage, where we can store, what will be the long term, what can be the long term process. Another portion is doing from the utilization point of view, that what are the different way we can utilize those captured carbon in this case. But if you want to make it combined, then we have to think from all the perspective, and that can be the focus, or that can be uh, the direction for the supply chain point of view. So now if we think that how we can transfer that one, that the CCUS process into the supply chain. So in a traditional supply chain network, we know that there will be multiple manufacturer, okay, who will produce the product, and there will be multiple customer who has a demand of those product, and in between there can be multiple stage like the warehouse, distributor and retailer. And overall our goal that to tra to transfer this product from the manufacturer to the customer, and based on the capacity of the manufacturer and based on the demand of the customer. So that will be the overall that will supply chain. Now we can transfer the same thing into from the CCUS point of view. So now if we think from the CCUS supply chain point of view, then different industries, the big industries which are emitting the carbon, then those can be used as a source, and this can be considered as a manufacturer in this case. Okay, all the power plants on the coal power, especially the coal power plants, or the steel industries or the cement industries, those can be the source in this case of the carbon. And then we will capture those carbon into, and there will be carbon capture plant or the compressing plant, and then we need to transport those captured carbon into an storage facility. Okay? And there can be multiple storage in this case. Okay? And then that can be considered as an CCUS supply chain point of view, where we have a multiple source, and our job is to that how efficiently we can transfer this carbon from the source to the different storage facility. Okay? And in between there can be other stage, like there can be utilization also a stage in this case. Okay? So overall, this way we can transfer this one into an supply chain network problem. But the challenge is that still, as I mentioned, that as the majority of the work mainly was done into isolated way, like still most of the work was done in how to uh, use different types of technology to capture the carbon and how we can efficiently do that one. But still, there are lots of work is needed whenever we are trying to connect those things. Okay? For example, like the transportation will be a big issue in this case, and majority of the cases we are using the pipeline to transport those things. Okay, but the issue that who will own those pipeline, and whether that will be owned by the federal government or the provincial government, and if he wants to use the transport, then we, if you want to think only from the pipeline, then we need to install this pipeline, or we can use the existing oil and gas pipeline in this case. So there is still, if we want to fully utilize this technology to reduce the carbon and go to the net zero target, then still lots of issue needs to deal. Okay, and that was one of the main challenges in this CCUS supply chain. That at the beginning we are thinking that maybe we will develop a mathematical model that will give us an optimal way to transfer this carbon, or to give us an supply chain network. But still, there are lots of issue has been still has to discuss. So that is why whenever we are discussing with the company, they were not that much interested on the optimization of the supply chain, but they are more interested on to find out that what can be the risk from the supply chain point of view into different stages of this CCUS supply chain. Okay? And that's why that was one of the goal for this research, that as there is no comprehensive risk mapping has been done for the CCUS supply chain, and still we are unknown that what kind of risk can be there, and what kind of strategy we can take to mitigate or to address those risks. So that is why the main research objective of this research is to develop and CCUS supply chain risk management framework, where some of the short-term objective is to identify the CCUS supply chain risk from the supply chain literature and validate those risks. And then we try to connect those risks with a different supply chain function of the CCUS. And finally, we also explored that what can be the different risk management strategy that we can consider, and combining all of them, we try to develop an theoretical supply chain risk management framework. Okay, and gradually I will go through some of the all these stages. So at the beginning, we started with the literature review, and we use the Prisma analysis for that one. And at the beginning, we give some meaningful keywords to find out related literature from Web of Sciences, Scopus, and Science Reader, and the Google Scholar database. And mainly we select the time frame from 2015 to 2023 as CCUS supply chain is still is little bit new, so we maybe there is not too much paper related before 2015, so that's why we selected the time frame. And 2023, because this is a part of one of my master's student who already finished his degree, so that's why that was done in the work was mainly completed at the end of the last year, so that's why 2023 was selected. And then we find out among almost 600 different papers based on those keywords, and then applying the inclusion and exclusion criteria. Then around 108 papers was related with the studies, which mainly deals with some sort of CCUS or the supply chain or the risk point of view. And from there, more in-depth analysis went through, and from there almost 48 article was found out that those were more related, directly related with the objective of this studies. Okay, but as I mentioned earlier, there are many papers which is focusing on the how we can capture the carbon, what can be the appropriate solvent to capture the carbon, how to improve the efficiency of the technology. But that was not the focus of this study. So our focus was to make from the supply chain risk point of view. So that's why those papers were not part or included into the further literature review. Okay. So almost this 48 paper was again went through in detail from the abstract literature review and the conclusion analysis. And from there, we find out that almost 23 research paper was finally was the actual one which we can rely on, or which can serve as a purpose of these studies. So this 2023 research paper, which mainly focusing on the some sort of CCUS supply chain or the supplies that were considered into further into more detailed analysis of these studies. Okay, and that was this paper mainly primarily used for the development of the CCUS risk supply chain management framework. Then we went into the next stage that now whenever you can see that if we see that based on the database search, that if we focus on the number of publication, as I mentioned earlier, that there are significant amount of the publication from, if you think only from the CCUS point of view. But if you think from the overall CCUS supply chain point of view, then there are very few publications that is discussed into the CCUS supply chain. And at the same time, as our main goal is to from not only the CCUS supply chain, we also the risk management of the CCUS supply chain. And then we can see that there are very few papers which address directly on the CCUS supply chain. Okay, so that was one of the issue that whenever we discuss and we have to analyze that CCUS supply chain risk management strategies, then there are very few studies to go through to get the information. So that is why at the beginning what we tried that instead of, as we have very few papers, we directly discuss with the CCUS supply chain risk. So we try to at the beginning broaden our scope, that we try to find out that all the papers which has been used or discuss different types of supply chain risk. And at the beginning, we mainly focus into 5 sector. One of the sector is the manufacturing and the production sector, and another one is the retail sector, another one is the energy and the process sector, another one is the agricultural sector, another one is the health sector. So at the beginning, we try to classify all the risk into different sector, and from the literature, and try to find out that which are the risk which can part of this different sector-based supply chain management. And there are multiple risks which are common, which can be part of all the sector, but there can be some of the risk which can be more important for one particular sector, maybe not that much important from the other particular sector. So this way, at the beginning, almost 46 risk has been identified, and then this went into the next stage of the analysis. Okay. So this is just a brief diagram that how those risk factor on the supply chain risk can be connected with different types of sector. For example, this is the manufacturing, the process sector, then the agriculture sector, energy sector. So this isn't just a brief an outcome that we can see that some of the risks are common into multiple sector, and but some of the risk can be very specific for that particular sector. Okay. So now then we as our focus into CCUS supply chain, and then we try to explore that among this one which sector is more representative of the CCUS. Then we based on the literature and discussion, we find out that this energy and the process supply chain, or this sector, and energy or the process sector that is more representative of the CCUS supply chain. One of the reason that, as I mentioned earlier, that oil and gas industry, they consider this is one of the key factors. So as we are transporting uh, the carbon or the condensed carbon, and we can use the same process like the oil and gas. If we are transporting the gas, then the carbon as in gas, we can transport that one. If we condense that one, make it liquid, then we can also transport that one as an oil. So we think that this energy and the process sector is more representative of the CCUS. So that is why this sector has been considered as a representative of the CCUS, and that 28 the risk factor that is connected with this sector, that has been considered as an the preliminary the supply chain risk factor for the CCUS. So this has been represented that 28 the factor that has been part of the now this CCUS supply chain risk. Okay. And this work has been, this literature review has been published into the Journal of Carbon Research, and mainly this is the assumption that this risk, the risk that energy and the process supply chain, that can be representation and of the CCUS risk assessment. Then we move into the next stage that as we assume that CCUS risk is a representation of the energy and the process supply chain, then we need to validate that one. And then the next stage will be that after the validation, now we can find out which are the risks which are directly related with the CCUS industries, and based on that one we can classify them based on the function, and then we can do the factor analysis to find out that which are the factor we can classify into different group, and how we can classify those risks into based on the function of the supply chain. And another portion is that now we know the risk, then we can classify them based on the function of the supply chain. But another important part is that what are the action we can take, or what are the risk mitigation or the risk management strategies we can take from this case. So as there are very few paper for the supply chain risk, CCUS risk, supply chain risk. So we can expect that there will be very few paper from the risk assessment strategies also. So that is why another literature review has been done to find out that what can be the appropriate risk management strategies from the other field, and then we can use the same thing based on the studies, that whether we can identify the appropriate risk management strategies that can be useful also for the CCUS supply chain. Okay, so that is, and based on combining all those information, then we can develop the conceptual supply chain risk management framework. Okay, so I will quickly discuss those things into the later stage. So the first one, that as we need, as one of our assumption was that energy and the process supply chain can be representative of the CCUS supply chain. So that's why we need to validate that one. And for that validation, we use the Delphi technique to validate that information. And almost initially around 28 respondent was contacted with the different academic background and different industrial background, and almost 21 they provide their feedback, and based on the questionnaire and based on the discussion with the feedback, we find out that among those initially 28 risk factors which are we consider, some of them are highly related with the CCUS risk supply chain, and some of them is not that much related with the CCUS supply chain. Okay, and among those 28, we fix a threshold of the 75%, and these are the 17 risk which has been find out that which exceed the the minimum threshold, that is 75%, and which is also showing that based on the discussion or based on the feedback from the experts, these 27 can be more representative of the CCUS supply chain risk management. So that is why in the next stage, these 17 important factor has been considered for the further analysis. Now the next part is that to how we can classify and how we can find out that which risk is more appropriate for different function of the CCUS supply chain. And as we discussed, there can be there can be four function of the CCUS supply chain. One of the source, then the capture and the compress, then the transportation, and then the utilization of the storage. So at the beginning, we considered that all these 17 risk can be part of all these four function. Okay, for example, the 17 can be part of the source. The same 17 can be part of the capture, transportation, and the utilization. Okay, and then we try to find out that which risk is more appropriate for any particular function. Okay. And for that one, we perform the data analysis, and we use the EFA, the exploratory factor analysis, and in that case, we mainly use the principal component analysis to find out that which can be the appropriate way to classify those risks based on their supply chain function. So for the data collection, initially around 350 professionals were contacted, but due to the time frame and due to the other issues, so almost 208 people responded in this case, and among them some of the responses was not missing, so we have to remove that one. So overall, around 202 responses has been considered for this factor analysis. So it is it enough? Still, that is fine for based on if he has a more than 200, but the more is better. But still, 200 is a good representation to do the data analysis and the factor analysis. So the factor analysis or the data analysis may be done with two stages. The first portion is to find out that to explore that whether those data can be used for the factor analysis or not, or whether those we can expect some good information or the related information from those data or not. And for that one, and at the beginning, the data factorability has been done. And in that case, we use the KMO test to find out that whether this sampling is adequate for the analysis or not. And then we also perform the Bartlett test for sphericity. And these are the result is showing that the minimum threshold is considered for the KMO case. Test is more than 0.6, so we can see that almost all the stage of the function, like the source, capture, and transportation utilization, those are above 0.6. So, and the same way from the p-value, all of them is less than 0.05, so which is also indication that the data we collected, which can be also used for the next stage of the factor analysis. And then the next part is that now we can try to find out the group or the commonalities of all those factors. So we have 17 factors, and then we can try to find out that which factor is more representative for which function, with either source, capture, transportation, or utilization, or there can be factor which can be the risk for multiple function. So this is the part of the result is showing from the PCA, and which is showing that some of the factors can be the part for multiple function, where some of the factor can be maybe part only for one, or there can be the few function. Okay, and based on that one, then we map the risk, and in here it is showing that we have the mainly four functions: source, capture, utilization, transportation, and the utilization. And this green factor is indicating that these are the some of the factors which are common for which are the factors which are common for all the function, like source, capture, transportation, utilization, where some of the factors are common into three function and some of the factors are common into only two function. Okay? And this is the indicating that all these factors which are common for all the function, where are the some of the risk factors which are common for three function and some of those are common for the two function. And then this information will be used for the supply chain mapping. Now we know that what are the risk of the CCUS supply chain, then how which risk belongs to which supply chain function. Then the next stage was that how we can find out the risk management strategies. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier that there are not enough literature from the supply chain risk management point of view, so that's we don't have enough literature from the how we can take efficient action to mitigate those risks. So that is why again we went through with all these 17 key risk factor, and then we went through again in the literature review and find out that what are the different mitigation and the strategies we can take to address those different types of supply chain risk. Okay, and we can find out that there can be risk which can be handled or which can be addressed using multiple mitigation techniques, and there can be a risk which can be handled by a specific mitigation technique based on the literature review. Okay, and then we, based on the literature review, we try to group them into different group and try to link each of the risk mitigation risk management strategy group with the appropriate mitigation strategies, and then try to link these mitigation strategies with the risk of the supply chain. So then is the final stage of this research that now we know the different function of the CCUS supply chain, different risk that can occur into those supply chain, and what can be the appropriate risk management strategy to address those risks. If I can connect all of them, then that is the theoretical development of the CCUS supply chain risk management framework or the risk management mapping. So in here we can see that at the top portion, that these are the four supply chain of the CCUS: source, capture, transportation, utilization. And the next portion is the risk, and we some of the risks are common for all the function. Some of the risks are specific to that particular function. Okay? And the third stage is that what can be the appropriate risk management strategies, and some of the risks are common and some of the risk management strategies are also common, whereas some of the risk management strategies are very specific and particular function of the supply chain. Okay, so that is the overall supply chain risk management framework, and recently that paper has been also published in Clean Technologies and Environmental Policy Journal. So I have a few minutes left. So I will quickly go through about some of the implication of this work. So as we know that CCUS can be considered one of the way to mitigate our target for the net zero or the carbon neutrality. So if during this process, if something as we are transferring the carbon, so if there is any accident happen, that can the way to remove those carbon again, then that can be also the issue for the supply chain from the climate point of view. So that is why the effective risk management is very important to reduce the environmental consequence of this CCUS supply chain, and to reduce the and to support the transition of our low carbon future. From the economic point of view, they still it is a very quite expensive technology, and still lots of things need to do, especially from the for many there's still many questions that I will discuss from the future research point of view, and this a large investment is needed. So there is another still the thing that who will do this investment, whether that will be done by individual uh, company who is emitting the carbon, or whether that will be done by the federal government or the provincial government. So there are lots of economic implication has been involved. So that is why before investing, it is better to know that what can be the different risk that can be occur from the economic perspective also, and also from the managerial perspective. So still that is a new field, so still managers still we need to know that how we can effectively engage with the different types of regulatory bodies, how we can address those issues. And also this is an very still novel the rapid technology, the different types of carbon capture process or technologies is coming, then how to adopt those things and how that can be used for the analysis. That can be another implication for the managerial point of view. And from the research point of view, and this is that framework can initially start as an way to think about more in detail about the about how those risks can be implemented, or how those things can be impacted, and what are the different strategies which can be more aligned with the CCUS supply chain. And that can be the way forward for the academician or the industrial practitioner or the policymaker to work into this area. And finally, I will conclude my this lecture. And so at the beginning, we find out that almost 46 different risks which can be used for the supply chain, and then we narrow those down into 28 supply chain, which is more focusing on the energy on the process. And then after the validation, we find out 70 is more specific risk for the CCUS supply chain. And then we try to group them into based on their function using the data analysis, and trying to develop a framework with comprehensive framework which can represent those risks for the CCUS supply chain. And finally, some of the mitigation strategies that can be used to reduce the environmental consequence. Okay. So quickly the limitations as based, as I mentioned, there are very few literature for the CCUS supply chain. So that's why we have to at the beginning our scope should be broad, and then gradually try to borrow the narrow those down. And we validate the risk based on the Delphi method, so based on the expert feedback. So if the expert is biased, then definitely that will impact the overall result. At the same way, the PCA and the data analysis is still many people working the supply chain, but many of them, they are not working into the CCUS supply chain, as this is still this is not that much implemented into the real life. So that's why their finding maybe can be different from the CCUS supply chain compared to the conventional supply chain. For the final portion, that the risk, as I mentioned, for the future research, this is a very interesting field to further work. We only explored develop the risk management framework, but further work can be done how to assess the causal link between different risks, and how those risks are interconnected, and how those are contributing into the other factor. If you only think about the transportation point of view, then still we can do many things that in that case. For example, if you are only using the pipeline, but pipeline is not only the option, there can be other options, and like the rail, the sea, then what can be the way. And this transportation can be different from the country perspective. Like for example, from the Europe, the uh, it is easy to maybe the easy to transfer using the rail from one country to the other country. But if you think from the Canada point of view, then itself each of the province is so big that it will be not that much effective to use the rail in this case, or that will be more complicated to use the existing rail line. So whether we can use the pipeline, if we use the pipeline, then whether we are going to build a new pipeline, or whether we can use the existing pipeline of the oil and gas pipeline to use the same purpose or not. So that itself and a big area of the exploration. And the other one that as we explore the risk and we can develop a risk-based decision-making framework just to address different types of uncertainty like the demand, supply, and the policy. Like the other supply chain, the demand can change, the supply chain change. At the same way, if we have only one central pipeline which is transporting the carbon from multiple source to the multiple storage, then if that pipeline has an impact or that pipeline is an failure, then what will the overall supply chain will disrupt, then how to address those things, that can be another interesting topic to explore. And finally, the another one that we like to do that how we if we try to optimize the CCS supply chain based from the cost point of view, from the time point of view, and considering different stage of the supply chain, that can be another area where another of my student is currently working in this case. So that will be the end of my presentation. So I would like to thank University of Regina and the President Seed Grant to conduct these studies, and also all of you. Thank you for listening this presentation. And these are some of the reference I use in this case. Okay. Yes, I think I'm a little bit over time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Kabir. Very nice presentation indeed, and very relevant to the theme of today on the topic of energy management. So the floor is now open for question and answers, and I invite the audience to ask questions if they have any to Professor Kabir. Okay, so if there are no questions, then I will maybe ask few questions for the benefit of the audience. So Professor Kabir, you talked about the carbon capture, utilization, and storage supply chain. So are we very actively involved in Canada in this area? What is the situation of Canada vis-a-vis other countries, since not many of us may be familiar with the carbon supply chain? So if you could elaborate on who is using and where we stand on this.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that is little bit tricky question. Yeah, so in Canada, it also depends on the province to province, and also there are many things based on the from the political point of view. So I will not go too much in detail about that one, but the issue that carbon capture is considered previously was mainly considering oil and gas was industry mainly considering more into that area. So you can expect where the activities of the oil and gas is higher, there in that area carbon capture is and considered maybe an significant contribution of the technology to explore. Especially in Saskatchewan, the government of Saskatchewan, the provincial government of Saskatchewan is more supportive for that one. And they are supporting this carbon capture technology. It's been quite a while, but still all those mainly from the uh, individual point of view, like from the test point of view. Maybe from the other province, like maybe Quebec is not that much supportive. Maybe their government is not that much supportive from the oil exploration. So BC is not that much supportive about that one. But Alberta and the Saskatchewan, where the government is a little bit conservative, so maybe they are a little bit more supportive about that carbon capture technologies in this case.
Okay. My second question is, you mentioned about different types of risks, and we learned about the prioritization and the strategies to mitigate those risks. So are these risks from the producer perspective or from the transporter? Who these risks belong to in the supply chain?
Uh, yeah, thank you. So in this case, we try to think from both of them, but that the issue is that still federal government started taking initiative. If you remember that recently they started the grant. I think last year it was at the beginning the grant was mainly from the carbon capture focus. The next portion was the transportation focus. Second stage of the grant, third stage of the grant was the utilization focus. But it's still all those stakeholder, they are still thinking from the isolated point of view. But whenever we want to make it more applicable from the global perspective or the overall perspective, then those have been interconnected. So still, we think that it can be used from both producer perspective and also from the customer perspective also. But it's still, we didn't find out that we were actually working or thinking from all the perspective point of view. So that was another more research has been done and more explanation is needed.
Okay. Thank you. There is a question from the audience from Manmeet. Can you hear me, Manmeet? Hello?
Yes, Professor. Yeah,
So
I can
please
hear you.
ask. I see that you have
Sure.
posted a question. If you can.
Sure. Yeah. So my question is regarding the Paris Agreement, which you mentioned initially during the start of your presentation. So the question is like, what are the major challenges for Canada to reach its goal for 2050 Paris Agreement, and how much progress is made from 2015 till 2024?
So the Paris Agreement was made in 2015. So still, I don't have the exact figure that how much it made, but when until 2024, still we majority of the countries they didn't match until that was agreed during that time. So that was another the issue that at the beginning we met at 2030 our target, but whenever we have the actual one, we find out that still we are far behind to meet that one. The issue that some of the province made maybe some progress, but still some of the province they are far behind. So overall, we are still I don't know the exact number, but still we are much behind that we are targeting to the 2030, and that's why the new target has been set at is 2050. That can be the net zero for the Canada.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience? So since some of you joined late, so I would just like to, there are one or two who are just joining. So for those of you who are attending or meeting with Professor Golam Kabir for the first time, Dr. Golam Kabir is Program Chair and Associate Professor in Industrial Systems Engineering at University of Regina. His research interests include sustainable and resilient infrastructure, circular economy, life cycle analysis, decision analysis under risk and uncertainty, and data-driven decision making. He has published 200 refereed journal and conference papers and is currently involved in multiple NSERC and MITAX funded projects in the field of sustainable systems planning and management, life cycle assessment, net zero strategies. He has worked with multiple government organizations, private and not-for-profit industries. So thank you very much, Professor Kabir, for the nice presentation. It was very useful. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the research. Okay.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. So now it seems we are doing good on time. So now I will move to the second speaker of today, Mr. Sushil Kumar Sharma from Sustaineco. Okay.
Yeah, good morning, Professor.
Okay, good morning. How are you today?
I'm perfectly well, and wish that environment also supports us during the program.
Yes, it is really indeed our pleasure to have Mr. Sushil Sharma among the thunderous environment that is currently in around his place in India. So thank you so much, Sushil Sharma ji, for accepting our invitation. And I would like to first present a brief bio of him for the benefit of the audience, and then I will give the floor to him. Sushil is a certified sustainability and business excellence assessor and energy auditor. He has over 41 years of experience across various domains. A fellow of the Institution of Engineers, Sushil graduated in electrical engineering from Government Engineering College in 1983 from Jabalpur. Throughout his career, he has published in widely acclaimed technical and management papers and participated in various national and international conferences. He is a lifelong learner, as he says, and his current focus areas include climate ecosystems, sustainability, energy transitions, net zero, energy efficiency, corporate governance, and corporate social responsibility. He has conducted over 160 programs in top-ranked institutions and organizations on topics of global priority like sustainability, climate crisis, green fuels, energy transition, and total quality management. He has received numerous awards and recognitions from esteemed organizations like NTPC Limited, Institution of Engineers, Society of Power Engineers, and QCFI. 3 of his programs have been featured in the UNEP event calendar, showing his impactful contributions to the field. We are very delighted to have you with us today, Sushil. Please welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Professor Anjali. I wish my voice is okay.
Yes, we can hear you. Everybody
And
can hear.
video is also fine.
That's okay, fine. Yes.
Great. So let me say good morning to you all and good evening. Since we are connected from various continents across the globe, I am speaking from India, where it's evening time. So topic for the day for me is energy transition in an era of global boiling. In fact, it is one of the most pressing need and the challenge to present humanity. The way progress kept happening, beginning say 1970s for last 50 years, has put us in very difficult stage, and I will share all the details subsequently. Now, energy transition means transitioning from dirty fuels towards clean and green fuels. We all know that we need energy, and we need energy increasingly, since automation is on increase and our dependence on energy as well. With this background, let me take up to you the topmost forum of the globe, wherein Secretary General, while addressing the United Nations General Assembly on climate on 27th July 2023, that's last year, he stated, humanity is in the hot seat. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived. That's why the theme in the era of global boiling. Leaders must lead. No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for others to move first. There is simply no more time for that. It is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only with dramatic, immediate climate action. Now, almost 15 months later, last week, this year, a summit of the future again was held in United Nations, and the outcome is equally challenging. The summit came with a pact which is known as Pact for the Future. And the critical point out of it are, the pact is an action-oriented document that covers a range of topics, including the topmost is again climate change. The pact aims to protect the environment and the climate. Digital cooperation. Digitalization is on multiplication phase, so as the risk. So this has become the topmost again priority. The pact includes a global digital compact, Global governance. The pact aims to revitalize multilateralism and transform global governance. If we recall the Sustainable Development Goals, which are 17 in numbers, goal number 17 is collaboration, cooperation, and teamwork. So this global governance is the issue. Peace and security. We all know that in different parts of the world, now for more than 2.5 years, non-stop wars are going on, and they are also increasing in intensity and in numbers. Human rights. The pact promises to promote and protect human rights, including fighting racism and xenophobia. Representation. The pact pledges to improve representation for Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So with these latest developments, I will be taking you all through a journey which flows from global scenarios, dirty fuels and global boiling, to energy transition, clean and green energy, energy for sustainable future, and finally it's your time, the question answers. So ecosystems are very critical and important for survival of human beings, not now, but since ages. The pre-industrial era prior to 1780 had a dynamic equilibrium of biodiversity and ecosystems. That is, before industrialization. Human communities coexisted with diverse ecosystems, relying on the abundance of plant and animal life for sustenance. So that was natural way of living and leading. Now, one of the greatest men world community ever had, he said, Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not every man's greed. Is a great man from India, Mahatma Gandhi, the father of nation, we respect him. So with these backgrounds, let me say only Bharat or India is the country on planet which worship Earth as mother. And ecosystems are divided into 8 categories by United Nations. Let me remind, this decade 2021-2030 is being celebrated as the decade of ecosystem restoration. So these ecosystems are farmland, forest, freshwaters, grasslands, mountains, oceans, peatlands, and urban areas. Integrating these 8 ecosystems, it covers entire globe on earth or on water. One of the way of defining ecosystems is also trees wealth. Let me congratulate and compliment Canada for having the highest number of trees per person. There are 10,163 trees per person, followed by Greenland 4964, Australia 3266, USA 699, France 203, and so on. But see, Egypt, only 1 tree per person. Now, like Canada, India is also very rich in ecosystems, and ecosystems, as I have quoted, is being worshipped since ages, so as it is protected and enriched instead of forced deteriorations. And India have very rich cultures which is known now globally and respected world over. India being the Vishwaguru, and we are again on the path back. Now let me take you back to industrialization, how industries evolved globally. So Industry 1 began in year 1780 with mechanization. During this phase, water power and steam power, steam produced from coal, used to be the source of energy. It lasted for 120 years. Industry 2 commenced in year 1900 with mass productions by assembly lines And during this phase, electricity became second motive force along with mechanical power. Third, this industry phase 2 lasted for 70 years. Industry phase 3 began in year 1970. It lasted for 30 years. And during this phase, computerization and automation, they began and picked up. Industry 4, which began in year 2000, that is turn of century. And during this phase, cyber physical systems, they came into practice. Now, Industry 5, which is again transitioning from Industry 4 to Industry 5, it is recorded to commenced in year 2020. During this phase, mass customization is defining the industrial phase and cyber physical systems with cognitive systems. Now, artificial intelligence, data science, and all, they are further adding up speed to it. So what we have seen, industrialization is continuing, and it is in fact becoming faster and faster. Industry 1 lasted for 120 years. Industry 4 lasted for just 20 years. So about Canada, these are some major indicators. GDP, 2.78 trillion. GDP annual growth, 2.45%. GDP per capita in terms of US dollars, 40,886. CO2 emissions, which is one of the parameters for today's program, metric tons per capita is 3.95, and surface area is second largest country globally with 5,49,087 square kilometers. And population is 67.97 million. So with these backgrounds, let us look into the present scenario. The world is increasingly experiencing hot temperatures, boosting the need for cooling and reducing the need for heating, wherein Canada is also, in fact, experiencing greatly. Policy action is translating into investment and deployment. These are at United Nations platform. Efficiency policy momentum builds, but global energy intensity progress slows down. Efficiency action accelerates as countries move to contain economic pain from the energy crisis. The G20 countries represent nearly 2/3 of the world population and 85% of the world economies. G20 countries account for almost 90% of global renewable power capacity today. In 2023, global renewable power capacity is 3870 gigawatt, and it is increasing very fast on daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Solar accounted the largest share of 1419, hydro with 1268, and wind with 1017 gigawatt. In the accelerated case, enhanced implementation of existing policies and targets, the G20 could triple their collective installed capacity by 2030. Not only that, G20 have the potential to contribute significantly to triple renewables globally. That means they are in a position, very strong position financially to support other countries as well, which is the call of United Nations. The deployment of efficient technologies is curbing energy demand and heralding the peaking of fossil fuels. Doubling efficiency progress could cut energy bills by 1/3 and make up 50% of CO2 reductions by 2030. Canada dropped from 10th to 13th in international ranking on energy efficiency. That means Canada needs to pick up back. Canada's biggest public companies are lagging on sustainability reporting in the form of ESG reports. 59% of the Canadian organizations reviewed are not including sustainability related information in their annual reports. Canadian companies not ready for new ESG standards and reporting regulations. 62% of companies don't obtain assurance over any of their ESG matrices. Only 35% of the firms reviewed have a formal net zero commitment, and only 17% have set a date to reach their target. That is scientific way of setting targets. Finally, stakeholders recognize that most companies depend on nature and want information on how they protect the water, land, and biodiversity of the region wherever they are operating. So with these backgrounds, I am taking you to the types of fuel which are being consumed globally even now. Herein is the history beginning 1800, that is, say, we can say industry 1 onwards, up to 2023 latest, wherein the fossil fuels are coal, oil, and gas. This is contribution from coal in terms of terawatt hour energy, from oil, from gas, and total. In terms of percentage, 32.5% is from coal, 38.9% from oil, and 28.6% from gas. Now, in present commitment of globally achieving net zero, oil and gas contribution is likely to be not more than 50%. So it will be reducing from current of 67% to 50%. Coal will be almost going away, not zero, but almost vanishing, less than 10% from 32%. So that's the, in fact, nutshell energy transition. Now, if we look into coal, this is latest forecast for the year 2024, wherein coal consumption is increasing in Russia, Australia, China, and India, along with the rest of the world, accounting for 16 million tons. So together, this year increase is estimated to be 258 million tons, whereas coal consumption is reducing in USA, Indonesia, European Union, I can say including Canada. So this reduction is 132 million unit, that metric tons. That means 8014 million tons is the target to meet this year's energy requirement of globe. So this is pattern of coal production, rather consumption by major economies globally. And if we look into them, China holds the top rank or spot as the world's largest fossil fuel producer. During previous decade, China has used more coal than rest of the world put together. United States is a dominant player in both oil and gas production, natural gas. India is the third most energy producing and using country globally. The first one is China, USA is second, India is third. Canada, for that matter, is eighth. Energy was already a hot topic before 2022, but soaring household energy bills and a cost of living crisis has brought it even more to the forefront. That's why there are focused attention on energy use efficiency. Now, coal production in million tons is here, wherein Canada is among major coal producing countries with 47.5 million tons production, and the first topmost, as I mentioned in previous slide, is China, which is producing and consuming globally the most coal. About oil production, these are the major. In fact, oil is found in most of the countries in varying quantum. So oil production in million barrels, the top per day, and these are figures for December 23. The top 5 countries are United States with 13.31 million barrels per day, Russia 10.13, Saudi Arabia 8.95, Canada 4.99, China 4.17. So Canada is among top 5 producers at number 4. And put together globally, 93,280 million barrels oil is being produced every day. This is in fact the pattern for say last 6 years, beginning 2017 up to 2023. Herein we find a dip during COVID period. Since globally there were lockdowns, consumption of energy is substantially reduced. In 2023, global crude oil production amounted to approximately 4.5 billion metric tons. This was the largest amount that had ever been produced, and nearly 1 billion metric tons more than oil produced in 25 years before in 1998. So there is continuous increase in oil demand production, likewise LNG demand production and consumption. So herein is the trend for LNG beginning 1980 and projection up to 2050. So herein this also reflects how energy transition is taking place from coal towards oil. So country-wise breakup is given here along with Canada. So the major countries are US, Ukraine, Middle East, China, Canada, Russia, North Africa, India, and all. So NG production in terms of million meter cube per day, these figures are for 2022. United States number 1, Saudi Arabia number 2, Iran 3, China 4, and Canada 5. So these are top 5 LNG producers globally. And world over, overall LNG produced per day. So with global LNG consumption in million metric tons, here is a overall trend and projection, actuals for year 2019 up to 2022, and forecast which indicates continuous rise in different regions of the globe for demand of LNG. Now, we have looked into the details of 3 dirty fuels: coal, petroleum oil, and LNG. All these 3 during the process of combustion produces greenhouse gases, and that's the main concern of the world community today. Here is the concentration of CO2 in atmosphere beginning 1960 up to the year 2023. Herein we find that concentration is on increase year after year. Every teeth on the graph is showing a year. So every year I will be sharing the real values year-wise as well. And here are the monthly values of CO2. We all know that concentration of CO2 or GHG in atmosphere vary seasonally. Seasonally means rainy season, winter season, summer, autumn, and all. So that's why these cyclic graphs are there. But that black trend, it indicates that concentration of CO2 is on increase continuously. Now, here are CO2 emissions, country ranking. And here, Canada is also one among the top CO2 emitters. And contribution of Canada in terms of, it is 0.6, and territorial emissions, and consumption-based emission is 0.65. So that means consumption is more than emissions. These are major countries with CO2 emissions historical patterns, wherein Asia have contributed 457 billion tons of CO2, and the same number remains for North America, 457 billion tons equivalent. European Union with 353 billion tons, and then various countries it is there. India has contributed 48 billion tons, whereas Canada has contributed 32 billion tons, which is 2% of global and Canada with 32 billion tons is ranked 8th. So atmospheric concentration, these are the values for say February 22, 23 and 24, wherein increase is by 4 ppm from 419 to 424. Likewise, for February, April, it is increased by 6.5 ppm, that is 420 to 426. For June is the highest value recorded is 426.91 June 24, which was 420.94 in June 2022. So increase by almost 6 ppm, and this is for July. So July again increase is there 418.85 to 425.55. Though 425.55 is less than recorded in June and also in April, since they vary from month to month. Now, atmospheric CO2 during August is recorded 422.71, which 2 years back was 416.74. That means every year it is continuing. So warmest months during 1880 to 1920 on record is August 2024. During this month, protocol, Kyoto Protocol limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade on particularly month basis is already breached, though that limit set is on annual basis. So herein atmospheric concentration is given since 1960 up to year 2023, and we observe these horizontal black lines are the average for those particular decades. We observe that year after year, though there are variations, but decade after decade, this concentration in atmosphere is varying, and highest ever been during the year 2024, what we discussed for monthly basis. These are the values of CO2 concentration in atmosphere on monthly basis. I have attempted to bring out for latest period beginning 2021 January up to 2024 August. Herein we observe that during June 2024, the recorded value is 426.91, which used to be 418.93. That means an increase of 8 ppm. Now, increase of 8 ppm is during these 4 years is a big change. Herein is per capita emissions in terms of greenhouse gases equivalent of CO2. Here, Canada is the most contributor per capita greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, followed by United States, Russia, Japan, China, European Union as a whole, global average after that, then comes Brazil, rest of the world, Indonesia and India. So India being the third largest producer and user of energy in terms of CO2 or GHG emissions is not contributing yet negatively. Now, this is about Canada breakup, from where this contribution is coming. So domestic is contributing 3%. Then I will explain this one further next slide. Herein is the overall trend beginning 1990 up to year 2023. GHG emissions at global arena, global scenario, and GHG per GDP. Since GDP is growing year after year, though there are variations in GHG emissions on year basis, but GHG per GDP intensity, emission intensity is reducing sharply. That is really appreciable need of time, and it speaks that energy transition is happening in real sense. So about Canada, these are the GHG contributions, wherein oil and gas industry is contributing 28%, agriculture 10%, transportation 22%, heavy industry is 11%, buildings 13%, electricity is 7.7%, and waste and others 7%. So these are the major sectors in Canada which are contributing in GHG emissions. Now, this improvement in concentration of CO2 leads to change in temperature. And herein is the temperature profile beginning 1850 up to year 2023. Herein we observe, though temperature being always vary yearly basis, but trend speaks that up to say 1970s, this trend was not dangerous. Ecosystems were in a position to absorb and accommodate. But then onwards, this trend has become very sharp, and that's the reason why climate change to climate crisis to global boiling. And now what next? That's the point. So warmest month, as I have mentioned earlier, being August 2024, recording 1.56 degree centigrade variation. So global boiling is the statement made by United Nations Secretary General on 27th July 2023. In fact, situation after that has further deteriorated. And this is the scenario. The last decade, 2011-2020, was the hottest decade on human history. The hottest years in history, 2023 is the hottest year, the gone year. Up to now, trend speaks that 2024 is going to be hotter than 2023. So will become the hottest year at the end of year. Before than that, 2016, 2020. So these are the all calendar years beginning 2010 onwards, and they been with some variation on yearly basis, but the hottest among the hottest years. So the first 6 months, January to June 24, recorded ever highest temperatures respectively. And survival, we all can understand and appreciate, is endangered. It's already getting too late, which is being echoed by Secretary General of United Nations repeatedly. So what we have visualized and experienced up to now, let me summarize. Climate crisis to global warming. What are the causes, effects, and impacts? So causes are rapid industrialization, increasing energy usage, agricultural practices being dependent on fertilizers, chemicals, and pesticides, deforestation for want of land for urbanization, and then agricultural purposes. Transportation, air, surface, and marine, all are adding heavily in greenhouse gases. Resource extraction for want of generating energy and other industrial requirements. Greedy customer practices. So we are not in fact limiting our requirements to balance the availability and requirements, and that's the reason of sudden price rises. Livestock are endangered because of habits leading to non-vegetarians diet are on increase. Effects are rising temperatures, pollution, all three, air, water, and land, unpredictable weather patterns, extreme weather events, rising sea levels, land degradations, loss of biodiversity, loss of wildlife. Now, the impacts are poverty, hunger, food shortages and water shortages, malnutrition, increased diseases, desertification, displacement, and loss of lives. In this background, those sustainable development goals, in fact, the 17 goals, they are aiming to address all these issues. We will look into those goals a bit later. Now, I have attempted to brief you updates on specific happenings in Canada. So Canada records record-breaking temperatures. And this scenario, many of you must have experienced. Temperature has gone as high as nearing plus 50 degree in Pakistan, and in Canada, it has recorded also in the range of 49 degrees centigrade. So here in different places in Canada, these are the temperatures recorded during June 2021, wherein the hottest temperature was recorded 49.6 at Lytton's, and Antarctic Canada, this is about this year, June 18 to 20, 2024, a heat wave reached a peak temperature of 26.1 degrees Celsius averaged over the region, which is 10.6 degrees Celsius above normal. I am sure many of you must be having experience. If not you, definitely your parents and grandparents. The summer featured the hottest day on record, that is July 22 this year, 2024, according to a NASA analysis of global daily temperatures data. These are for Canada. Now, Canada is experiencing fires increasing in numbers and intensity since last 100 years. So herein are the scenarios on fires in Canada. They are very disturbing, and they become so serious that even air services are deployed to quench the fires. And heavy damages are taking place. Fires are also one of the source of greenhouse gases, which are damaging the ecosystems and environment. So these are different happening of fires incidences in Canada during last year and this year. Now, second one is flood. So flood is also very seriously damaging our overall creations during industrialization. And see the scenarios, they are all real life this year and previous year happenings in Canada. I have attempted to share with you. Wind storms, they are also increasing in number. They are also intensifying, and they are also leading into serious damages. Sandstorms, all these are happening because of rise in temperatures or disturbances in ecosystems. Here in hailstorms, they damages, they affect day-to-day life, agriculture, and all. Cyclones. So Canada is a country with the longest coastal line, and cyclones, they are increasing in number and intensity, affecting the lives of people there. Tsunamis are also now approaching Canadian coast and affecting the lives along coastal lines. Herein, the Lee 2024 hurricane, which happened this year, and these are the overall statistics since year 2020 about hurricanes, and this year the major ones. So Hurricane Lee last year 2030, so lot of impacts and damages are taking place. Landslides also because of heavy rains, abnormal weather patterns, they lead to landslides, they leads to damages in property, movement, and everything. So finally, all these are summarized in the pattern of sustainability circles. So this is the sustainability circle for globe as a whole in 4 parameters. The quadrant 1 is about ecology, what we have seen specific to Canada. Second one is cultural. Third one is governance or politics. And fourth one is industries or economics. So we find that out of 4 quadrants, the most suffered quadrant is ecology. And among ecology parameters, the worst one are emissions and waste management, materials and energy requirements, water and air pollutions, habitat and food issues, which is scored all between 2 to 4 out of 10. That means deterioration is up to 80%, 70%, and 60%. With this, ecology score has dropped to 44%, recording deterioration of 56%. Cultural score is 83% with 17% deterioration. Political or governance score is 77% and economics is 76%. So this slide summarizes really what is happening are we developing or we are destroying ourselves? So with this background, let us just briefly look into sustainability. Sustainability is a societal goal that broadly aims for humans to safely coexist on planet Earth over a long time. The four pillars of sustainability are human sustainability, social sustainability, economic sustainability, and environmental sustainability. So not going further in details for want of time, as I have mentioned, the background we have seen, making basis of that, United Nations is observing the ongoing decade 2021-2030 as United Nations Decade on Ecosystems Restoration. The aims are, the healthier our ecosystems are, the healthier the planet and its people. Taking this into account, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed 2021-2030 the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration to call for the protection and revival of ecosystems all around the world for the benefit of people and nature. So these are basically the purpose, and this decade is focusing during 10-year period to restore our planet, and there are strategies for the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration comprising a global movement, global leadership, building capacity together, addressing financial requirements globally, changing behaviors to lead a life which is environment friendly, then giving right incentives for adoption and use of clean and green fuels, that's energy transition, celebrating a culture of restoration, and finally addressing the requirement of the coming next generation. So with these backgrounds, before this decade was declared, the basis was adopted during 2015, again by United Nations General Assembly, defining in the form of 17 sustainable goals with single motto of leaving no one behind on planet. So these goals are being reviewed every 5 years and revised targets given by countries. But as was asked by the previous one of the sessions question, progress definitely is out of track, and seriously, in most of the countries. Now, these sustainable development goals can become a reality only if clean and green energy is adequately available. In that scenario, it becomes easier to make requisite progress and finally achieving for leaving no one behind by the defined timeline of 2030. In fact, 2016 they became operational. 7 years are already over. We are left with 7 years. That means we are in between, midway. Now, world projected installed capacity is increasing and increasing continually as reflected here. These are the values 2020 onwards on 5-yearly basis, and capacity is likely to be doubled during 2050 from 2172. So that means additional capacity all must come from renewable sources, and as part of energy transition, even existing dirty fuel capacities need to be replaced by clean and green fuels. We will look into a bit details. Now, the global goal is net zero by the year 2050. The world can reach net zero emissions by 2050, but it requires major changes according to United Nations Environment Program recent study outcomes released. Our energy systems will need to be totally transformed. Focus is on energy. The International Energy Agency report net zero by 2050 says huge decline in the use of coal, oil, and gas is essential so as the increase in greenhouse gases concentration in atmosphere is not only checked but reversed. These changes could impact the economy, citizens, and governments. So net zero global target is by year 2050. The commitment of Canada is also matching with it, 2050. China has committed 2060. India has committed 2070. But global target continue to be 2050. Now, energy transition global scenario, I am just briefing a bit on it. World Energy Transition Outlook 2023, which aims to still achieve 1.5 degrees centigrade temperature rise limit by end of this century. The scale of the climate emergency has become ever more obvious in recent years, with record high temperatures and extreme weather events linked to climate change occurring around the globe. The efforts made and success achieved during 2021-2030 in reducing greenhouse gas emissions will determine whether global temperature rise can be limited to 1.5 degrees centigrade of pre-industrial levels this century, in line with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So we are not left with much time, but challenges. IRENA's 1.5 degree centigrade scenario set out in the World Energy Transition Outlook presents a pathway to achieve the 1.5 degree centigrade target by 2050. And there are further updates on it. Now, the three key pillars that forms the foundation for action to realign the global energy transition with climate objectives are advancing a policy and a regulatory architect to facilitate targeted investments and improve socio-economic and environmental outcomes. Strategic realignment of institutional capacities to help ensure that skills and capabilities match in energy systems that integrate a high share of renewables. Building the necessary infrastructure and investing at a scale to accommodate new production locations and emerging alternatives. So here in the fuel-wise energy scenario of major economies, wherein South Africa is using in terms of percentage most fossil fuels today, followed by China, India, Indonesia, and in this pattern. In fact, among these, Canada is not appearing, since more than 60% of Canada energy is generated at present using hydro sources and additionally with solar and wind. We will look into those details. So fossil fuel most using countries are South Africa, China, and India, top three. Fossil fuel least users are France, Ukraine, and UK. In fact, UK last week have shut down their last running coal station and has become the first country among G20 members to become coal-free in energy generation. That is a very positive and big news. Clean and green fuels most using countries are France, Ukraine, Vietnam. Since France is generating most of its energy using nuclear. Nuclear is considered to be clean source of energy. In addition to that, they are also using solar and wind. So installed capacity of top 10 countries is here, wherein Canada is at number 6 with 109 gigawatt. Canada's total installed capacity for wind, solar, and energy storage at year end 2023 was 21.9 gigawatt. This is about renewables. This was an 11.2% increase from the previous year. We must clap. 11% increase is a big change. Well done. Here's a breakdown of the capacity-wise sources. Utility scale, that is integrated with the grid. Wind and solar capacity 20.4 gigawatt. On-site solars, they are 1.2 gigawatt. That means they are standalone, supplying energy to maybe industries or houses. Energy storage capacity is 356 megawatt or 539 megawatt hour. The Canadian Renewable Energy Association believes that Canada needs to deploy more than 5 gigawatt of new wind and solar energy per year to meet its 2050 net zero target. So focus is to be on wind and solar as part of or to meet the energy transition target. Herein is Canada energy transition in terms of capacities which are beginning 2005 and projection up to 2050, 45 years duration. Herein we find hydro is contributing 61.3%, nuclear say 13%, fossil fuels 19%, wind 6%, and solar 0.5%. So there is vast potential for wind and solar to put up in addition to hydro becoming the pumped hydro storage and substituting the requirement of even batteries. So if Canada focuses on these clean options, may think of nuclear also in the form of modular nuclear reactors, which are now gaining popularity. Technology is stabilizing and they are going to be the next industry-based nuclear reactor, which will be in fact manufactured in industries, packaged and transported at users' location, likewise other equipments. So this is in terms of energy contribution during the same period, 2005 to 2050. So if we talk during the year 2019, generation was 632 terawatt hour, which is to be 819 terawatt hour at the year 2050. 55% will be hydro by year 2050, which now is at 61.2%, and 19% is wind, which is 6% now. So energy transition is a reality which is happening in Canada, and these are the various scenarios. Net zero emissions, first two, the targets for different sources to contribute by the year 2030 and then by the year 2050. Then next one comes higher carbon prices. That means under the global energy scenarios, so compositions are changing between these two and first one. Next comes high demand scenario. If demand is rising, then patterns will be like here. So contribution remaining will be coming from hydro and storage. Then comes limited transmission if there are transmission constraints or absorption of renewables in the grid. Finally, hydrogen will be again green fuel in coming time, and scenario is shared here with, and then it becomes the BECCS, that is finally bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. So all scenarios see wind and solar dominate new capacity additions. Electricity storage also sees rapid growth. New demand is primarily met by wind and solar, while high GHG emission generation technologies see rapid decline. The importance of hydropower remains high. Net zero emission electricity scenario, and finally bioenergy scenario. So these are the various pathways. Now, facts about Canada. I will take about 5-7 minutes. I think that will be well within time, and then we summarize and finally move out to question answers. So Canada solar power stations, as of year end 2023, Canada has 5.8 gigawatt installed and operational solar capacity. The installed capacity of solar power in Canada has grown substantially, which was just 26 megawatt during the year 2027. So 26 megawatt to 5.8 gigawatt. Now, this is another technology which is gaining grounds world over, and Canada has vast potential since coastal areas are there. So India has developed this technology of floating solars. Singapore has also taken up, and few European countries have also started. So solar systems, they are floating on water bodies. That means land is not required, and efficiency of this floating solar systems is almost 30% more than ground-mounted systems. So efficiency advantage, cost economy advantage. This technology has matured very fast. Experimentation was done during the year 2015-2017. That means 7 years before, with 1 megawatt, and during this period is already scaled up to 100 megawatt. So down below left side is at 92 megawatt in sea backwaters, seashore area backwaters. Likewise, Canada has a lot of potential sea backwaters. 100 megawatt, this is a reservoir of one of the coal stations therein. Now, wind power plant in Canada. So installed capacity of Canada at year in 2023 is already 16.9 gigawatt, and this is projected to be 28 gigawatt by the year 2029. So there are a variety of activities which are happening in Canada in the field of wind. In fact, in addition to terrestrial wind, European countries, now India is also beginning with offshore wind farms. So this is another alternative for wind energy. Canada's coastal line measures 2,42,043 kilometers, the longest any country have globally. In 2022, wind energy generated 36 terawatt hours of electricity in Canada, accounting for 5.7% of total electricity generation, which provided enough electricity to power about 3 million typical Canadians' homes. 3 million. The province of Nova Scotia announced a target to offer lease for 5 gigawatt of offshore wind by 2030. So offshore will be becoming a reality now in Canada. Canada already has 41 offshore wind farms, but they are yet to become commercial. So this is another alternative, green biofuel, that is ethanol production. Canada is one of the leading country, and in year 2023, Canada have already used and mixed 3.9 million cubic meter of ethanol into gasoline, which was the highest amount ever. Canada's consumption of ethanol is generally higher than its production. That means there is enough scope to increase the production. Right now, difference is being met by imports. So green biofuel, this is one of the ethanol plant in Canada, which has contributed greatly, and there are now multiple plants like this. And herein is the trend of ethanol production year after year, which has increased from 115 million liters to 420 million liters. This is a biofuel pellet, a substitute for coal. In fact, lot of fire cases happens in Canada wherein farmers are putting their crop residue on open fires. And you see this scenario, it not only burns the top surface, top soil, it deteriorates the quality of soil, it leads to fugitive emissions and in fact the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So impact of crop residue burning, there are many, which includes climate pollutants, smog and haze, aerosols and particulates. Then there are variety of reasons including soil erosion and environmental issues. So these crop residues are now converted into, this is again technology developed by India, is being used. India has given policy approval for mixing 7% crop residue biofuel pellets along with coal and substitute the coal by biofuel pellets. So these are the real scenarios which I could capture and is sharing the real life scenario of a coal station where you find on right side these biofuel pellets are mixed with coal. Their GCB and properties, they are in harmony with coal and there is no issue. Now for Canada, this is one of the big opportunity. Coal-fired methane power. Canada has significant potential for coal-fired methane in several provinces, including British Columbia, Alberta, and Maritime Canada. So I am not sharing the details right now for want of time, but huge potential exists since this coal-fired methane, if not used, it is contributing in greenhouse gases accounting of the country, which is in fact in Canada accounts for up to 40%. So here lies the big opportunity. Now, since Canada have a lot of water bodies and the longest coastal line, these are distributed wind energy generation within water and then on top of homes. So some of these things are already happening, but potential is lot. I was mentioning this one about a minute before, modular nuclear reactors. So these are becoming now realities, and modular nuclear reactor will be replacing the coal stations, coal units, in fact, boilers, as well as they will also be installed directly in mega industries, making energy available locally with the clean source of energy, that's nuclear power. Now, offshore wind farms, their capacity is height dependent, not only offshore, even onshore as well. So herein is the development in wind turbines technology, their height and capacities. Capacities which used to be in terms of kilowatt have become in terms of megawatt, and 15 megawatt, rather 16 megawatt turbine has already become operational in China. And potential in case of Canada, I can say, must be more than thousands gigawatt, which is 3 to 4 times the entire energy requirement of Canada. So offshore wind farms, they will be in fact contributing greatly in the energy transition story in unfolding times in Canada. Wave energy, this is again another technology which is maturing fast, and since coastal line is there, it will be again supplementing the energy requirements from green sources in Canada and on big scale. Another one comes pumped storage. Now, battery storage are essential for meeting the varying energy demand during time and seasons. Pumped storage is a good solution. I am sure this will be adopted increasingly, and the requirement for battery storage will get reduced. Herein, this is the battery storage energy system which is installed 10 megawatt grid connected here in India. Likewise, something is already happening in Canada. This is wave energy, coastal lines, water bodies, and this wave energy is also very suitable for generation of energy. Technologies are now maturing. Geothermal power. Canada has a large potential for geothermal energy, which could be used to generate clean power and heat buildings. Estimated potential is right now 5,000 megawatt. With evolution and maturing technology, it is likely to be 10,000 megawatt. Now, current uses are almost all geothermal energy in Canada is currently used for heating buildings, agriculture applications, hot springs, and industries. So these are some locations and projects which are geothermal based, along with their benefits and government policies. Now, this is another evolving technology, satellite power, which transmit power globally. So what we see in the center is a globe, white globe, which in fact receives the energy generated from solar panels through waves, and then it transmits to satellite, and finally it gets redirected where it is required. So this is the latest evolving technology. With time, it will definitely become a success story which will benefit we all globally. Data science and artificial intelligence, they are increasing in depth, variety, and numbers, and is speaking very shining future for us all. So with all these, the integration is one of the way of doing things under sustainable development goals, and call of the changing times is we have one sun which never rises and never sets if we are globe as a unit. So one sun, one world, and one grid is the call given by India, which is in fact adopted by many countries on United Nations platform. Shortly we will find the policies rolling out. Again, another one sun, one world, one grid. So roadmaps are being rolled out in 3 phases. They will be known with time. Global energy grid, integration of energy, as I have mentioned previous slide, that sun never sets, never rises. It only keep changing its position, and 24 hours it comes back to same position. So integration, this is the global grid, energy grid, which has been conceptualized. Now things are being worked out, and it is likely to become progressively a scenario, a factual way of progressing in the field of sustainable energy. So what we have seen, what I have attempted, we all need to accept the change and challenge, and we need to ride the wave and make global citizens proud. Thank you very much. I invite you all for questions, please.
Thank you very much, Sushil. Indeed, very knowledgeable presentation, and we learned a lot of statistics about the energy and the importance of saving and conserving energy. So the floor is now open for questions. Please ask your questions. Okay, so I will maybe start. So you talked about, Sarah Fareldel has a question. Please ask, Sarah.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you again for a great presentation. I had a question regarding one of your very first slides. As a
Most
resident
welcome.
with some of the research that I'm doing as well around sustainable governance for organizations. I was wondering, from your experience, since over 60% of organizations aren't on track to meeting their targets, what from your experience should be their first go-to action to mitigate this and to kind of resolve and take a step forward in the right direction in order to measure their progress?
In fact, I have attempted to bring out the various technologies which are emerging. They are in different phases of maturity. Many of them have already matured. So the biggest challenge what we see is checking the increasing trend of greenhouse gases first, and then reversing it. So, in fact, if we prioritize right now the technologies which have already matured, like ethanol, like converting crop residue into the bio pellets, doing so we will be reducing the consumption of coal as well as the petroleum products. Among the basket of 3 fuels, coal, petroleum oil, and LNG, LNG in fact is the cleanest. It contributes only 1/3 greenhouse gases if compared with coal. So need of the hour is to speed up topmost priority, the solar energy, the wind energy, solar in its all form, terrestrial, and on water bodies, floating. Likewise, wind energy on terrestrial territories as well as offshore, all across. Now, to add it up further to you, India, Arabian countries, and Europe, one grid is already conceptualized here. This will be taking up, this will be the energy grid along with commercial grid. So there will be rail routes along with in-between shipments and all along energy grid, wherein Asia, South Asia, along with Arabian countries, and up to Europe. They all be integrated. So the available natural energy from solar system will be used at its best. I wish I have answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So,
please, next question.
yeah, next question for so you talked about Mr. Sushil, one grid, one approach. So how far we are from this target, or we are already there? What is needed to make it happen, like as soon as possible? What is
In fact, this one sun, one world, and one grid. This concept being accepted by United Nations. Now, as we know, once as a policy it is accepted, then there will be strategies to follow, and then financing will begin. So, if just in a limited way, if I have to share an example, India is the biggest country and the third globally most generating energy in South Asia. India has already integrated with Sri Lanka, with Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and is in fact helping them in times of emergencies, as well as importing surplus hydro energy available in all these hilly territories. Now, India is also integrating with its grid Sri Lanka. So it is going to be a South Indian grid, South Asian grid instead of Indian energy grid. This grid in next phase is going to be integrated with Arabian countries. And then next it will increase to approach to Europe. And then onwards journey will continue. So it depends on commitment of financial resources by various countries at what pace they comes and they turns into reality. Just an example out of that, you may be aware that the energy which is generated in offshore wind farms in Denmark is already transmitted from Denmark to nearing 600 kilometers through undersea power cable of 500 kV DC up to UK, up to United Kingdom. That's why United Kingdom could get rid of coal-based energy. They have last week closed their last running coal station. I am sure they will keep it ready for emergency requirements, but maybe with time and maturity, they will sustain without coal requirements. So things are very positive. They are moving in the right direction. And since globally it is being admitted year after year in various international platforms like G20, COP, UNGA, top priority remains to now last week adopted the agenda of future.
Okay. So last question from me is that we always hear that there are different dimensions on which countries are advancing and making progress. So some are, let's say, doing good on the environmental aspect, and then another are working more on the human aspect and so on. So are there any, let's say, countries which we can look up to as sustainability champions or sustainability heroes, and then others can follow the model? Who are the leading, benchmarks in this area?
Perfect. So, in fact, there are now ESG ranking of countries globally. So, up to now, 62 countries, they have provided adequate data to international assessment and rating agencies. And out of them, if we talk as a continent, then Europe is leading. If we talk as a country, then Sweden is on the top. So if Canada wants to look forward, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, UK, and France. These 5 countries, they are among the top best ranked ESG nations.
So thank you very much. Are there other questions from the audience for Mr. Sushil? If not, then we would like to give a very heartfelt thanks to Mr. Sushil for making himself available. It was great to hear about his perspectives on sustainability, both from his practical experience and the several talks he has given. It was indeed great having you with us today for the CORS micro event. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and look forward to having you with us another time soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. And let me propose from my own side that any of the participants, if they feel they can share their questions through email to you, I will be more than happy to respond to any number of questions through emails.
Okay. Sure. Thank you very much. So feel free to contact.
And let me invite, if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I am available on LinkedIn, and I remain quite active on LinkedIn. My full name account is with Sushil Kumar Sharma, Sustaineco.
Thank you very much, and making time for us at this hour in India. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you, Professor, and hope to listen from you about this program feedback later on, as well as I will be more than happy to contribute for programs of the university for young minds globally.
It's our pleasure to have you with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.